I wasn't expecting balloons or a welcome home banner, just the familiar creak of the porch step and the solid click of the front door unlocking. That's all I wanted. Instead, my key met resistance. I tried again, slower this time. The metal teeth scraped uselessly inside the lock like a memory trying to remember where it belonged. I stepped back. The morning air was brisk, my breath visible. Everything looked the same. My potted aloe still sagged on the windowsill. The wind chime still hung crooked above the doorframe. But the lock, it had changed. That's when I saw it. A thin white sticker tucked near the handle, barely larger than a stamp. Centennial Lock and Safe, it read. And below that, service date Thursday, 3rd, 40 p.m. That was yesterday. Less than 24 hours after I'd left to care for Marcy while she recovered from her hip surgery. I pulled out my phone. No missed calls, no texts. I called Alex. Straight to voicemail. I called again just in case. Still nothing. For a few minutes, I just stood there, one hand still resting on the doorknob. Then I stepped off the porch and walked to my car. The Civic groaned when I opened the door. I slid into the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel, though I had nowhere to go. I couldn't call Marcy. She'd warned me. I couldn't face that right now. I sat there through dusk. No lights came on inside the house. No sign of movement. By midnight, my legs had cramped and my neck throbbed from the awkward angle. I cracked the window and pulled my coat tighter. I told myself it was a mistake, a mix-up. But the sticker was dated, intentional, precise. Around 4 a.m., the porch light flicked on automatically, still wired to my schedule. That small flicker of routine nearly undid me. But I stayed in the car, wrapped in my coat, watching the house I paid off. 20 years ago, pretend it no longer knew my name. The sun came up, slow bleeding light across the front yard. I hadn't slept, just dozed in broken fragments, always waking to the same sight, my house unchanged and unreachable. At 6:47 a.m., the door opened. Celeste stepped out like she owned the morning. She wore the robe I'd given her for Christmas, the soft slate gray one she'd barely thanked me for. In her hand was a mug mine, the chipped ceramic one I used every day for years. She took a sip of whatever was inside and looked out over the lawn completely at ease. She didn't glance toward the car. Didn't check if I'd returned. She just stood on my porch in my robe, sipping my tea, and then turned back inside like nothing had happened. That's when it stopped feeling like confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't Alex forgetting to call. This was a decision. One made in my absence and locked behind a new deadbolt. I didn't cry. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't knock. I turned the ignition and drove away just far enough to clear the neighborhood lines, but close enough to still see the roof from the grocery parking lot. I sat there a long time with my phone in my lap. Then I scrolled through old numbers, thumbing past ones I hadn't called in years until I found it. Ernie Beckman. He used to fix the storm windows when Jack was alive. Always wore suspenders and called me ma'am even after I asked him not to. He never asked questions. Just showed up and got to work. I hit call. Beckman came, the voice on the other end gravelly and unmistakable. Ernie, it's Leora Mendez. A pause. Well, I'll be. How's Jack? I swallowed. Gone 9 years now. Another pause. I'm sorry to hear that. I need a lock changed, Ernie. He didn't ask where or why. Tomorrow morning I'll be there by 7. I hung up and stared at the roofline of my house in the distance. I wasn't going home. I was taking it back. Ernie was already there when I turned onto the street, his old truck parked 2 houses down, like we were planning a heist. He gave me a silent nod as I stepped out, my breath visible in the cold morning air. He didn't ask questions, just walked up the steps and examined the silver lock with a grunt. Not your style, he said quietly. No, I answered. It's not. He set to work unfastening the sleek, modern handle Celeste must have picked. It gleamed under the porch light, too new, too polished, like it had never known rain. I watched as he replaced it with a solid brass deadbolt, the kind you feel in your bones when it clicks shut. Heavy. Familiar. When he handed me the new keys, they felt right. Like memory, not theft. "You want a spare?" he asked. "Just one." He didn't linger. He packed up his tools, gave me a look that was somewhere between respect and concern, and left without another word. I stood in the open doorway for a moment, taking in the silence inside. The air smelled like lavender and fake citrus, Celeste's touch. My quilt was gone. So were my framed photos from the hallway. But the wood floor still creaked in the same spot near the stairs. The soft ticking from the kitchen clock was still offbeat by half a second. Not everything had been overwritten. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice or break anything. Instead, I walked to the spare room where they'd been staying. Her bags were still there, lined up like a parade. Her robe hung on the back of the chair. A pair of glossy heels sat neatly beside the dresser. I gathered it all with care. I folded the robe, aligned the bags, paired the shoes. No violence, no message, just order. Then I carried everything out piece by piece and placed it along the porch. Clean, intentional, unmistakable. By the time the sun crested the trees, the lawn looked like a very tidy goodbye. At 9:11 a.m., I heard it, the scrape of a key, the subtle jangle of metal that once belonged to me. It didn't turn. Another attempt. Then the rattle of the knob. A beat passed. Then the knock. Leora Celeste's voice rang sharp and thin, like something pulled too tight. "There's something wrong with the lock." Another pause. Another knock, harder this time. "Open this door." I stood from the table and walked slowly toward the sound, the warm mug still in my hand. Mom Alex's voice followed. Softer. Hesitant. I opened the door. They both stood there. Celeste's arms folded in disbelief and Alex with his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, like he didn't know where else to put them. I looked at them. Then I looked down at the porch, the neat row of her things catching light from the soft morning sun. "They're not just things on the lawn," I said. "They're on my lawn." Celeste's face flushed. "This is completely uncalled for." So was changing the locks on someone else's house. Alex took a step forward, his eyes darting from mine to the doorway behind me. "It was a misunderstanding." "No," I said gently but firmly. "It wasn't." He stopped, stared at me like he didn't quite recognize who he was speaking to. "You didn't call? You didn't check? You left me in the cold without a word. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a decision." Celeste shifted her weight. "You said you'd be back Sunday." I said noon, I replied. She gave a shrug so casual it nearly made me laugh. I moved aside barely. "You can come in. Get what's left." Alex hesitated. "Where are we supposed to go? You didn't seem concerned about where I'd sleep." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "You have 15 minutes, I said, stepping back just enough for them to pass. And I watched as they crossed my threshold, like strangers. They stepped past me with the hesitant air of people walking into a place they suddenly realized wasn't theirs. Celeste didn't bother hiding her irritation. Her heels struck the stairs like punctuation marks to an argument I wasn't having. She disappeared into the spare room, the door slamming hard enough to shake the frame. Alex stayed in the hallway, shifting from foot to foot. I could feel him searching for something to say. Some gentle excuse, some soft landing that would make all this seem smaller than it was. "Mom," he started, lowering his voice, "you're taking this the wrong way. We didn't mean for it to come off like you changed the locks," I said. "How else am I supposed to take it?" He exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. "It was supposed to be temporary. Celeste wanted the place to feel settled while you were gone." "She thought I saw the boxes," I said quietly. "In the garage. The ones labeled donate." He froze. My sweaters? My books? The Afghan your grandmother made, all neatly packed, ready to be hauled off. I looked up at him. I didn't know about those, he said softly. But you didn't ask, I replied. You didn't ask about anything. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Celeste appeared dragging a suitcase and glaring at both of us. I'm ready, she snapped. This whole thing is ridiculous. I stepped aside, keeping the doorway clear. 15 minutes, I reminded them. You still have time. Celeste huffed and marched outside. Alex lingered a few seconds longer. Mom? We weren't trying to hurt you. You left me outside, I said. Like I was no one. His shoulders slumped, the truth settling somewhere behind his eyes. He picked up his duffel bag, without another word, and followed her out the door. I watched them walk across the lawn, the morning light catching on the brass lock behind me as I turned back into the house. When the door closed behind them, the house settled into a stillness so complete, it felt like it had been holding its breath for months. I stood there for a moment listening to the quiet. Not the uneasy kind that comes before an argument, but something softer, something mine. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, letting the familiar whistle break the silence. The tea tin was right where I'd left it, tucked behind the cereal boxes Celeste never touched. I brewed a cup and held it between my hands, letting the warmth rise slowly into my fingers. Then I walked. Not aimlessly, but with the careful steps of someone returning to a place she thought she'd lost. My slippers were back in the hallway closet, tucked neatly under the coats. My cookbooks sat on the kitchen counter, stacked exactly the way I used to keep them. The dining table was empty again. No bottles of scented oils, no stacks of unopened packages. The house didn't apologize. It didn't need to. It simply exhaled, and I breathed with it. I went upstairs next. The master bedroom looked bare, but not lonely. The blackout curtains were gone. The lace ones I loved were folded in a drawer waiting. I opened the window a crack and let the cool air drift in. It smelled like early spring and soil waking up. In the guest room, my room these past months, I saw the imprint on the pillow where I'd slept the night before. Everything fell apart. It didn't seem sad, just temporary. I carried my clothes back to the master bedroom, hanging each item slowly, letting the quiet guide me. No footsteps in the hallway, no whispered criticism from behind closed doors. When I returned downstairs, my phone buzzed. A message from Alex, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. For months he'd walked past me without seeing me. Not once had he asked if I was eating well, sleeping well, doing well. And now, suddenly, he wanted to talk. I set the phone face down on the counter and poured myself another cup of tea, letting the quiet settle fully before I decided what to do next. I found the manila folder under my bed where I'd kept it since Jack passed. It smelled faintly of ink and the soft dust of disuse. Inside were the things people forget until they need them: property deeds, the old will banking authorizations. Every paper had my name. Everyone had once been shared in spirit, if not in ink. I made an appointment with Howard Leonard. He'd been our lawyer for years, a quiet man with silver-framed glasses and a habit of pausing before he spoke. When Jack died, Howard handled the estate with clean precision. I hadn't needed him since until now. His office smelled the same leather chairs, fresh paper, printer heat. "Leora," he said, standing as I entered. "It's been a while." It has. We sat. I opened the folder, laid it out before him like a timeline of trust. "I need to update the deed," I said, "and the will, and I want to change the power of attorney." He didn't blink. "To whom? My banker? Someone who doesn't ask for keys to places that don't belong to them." He gave a quiet nod and leaned back in his chair. "You're not the first," he said. "We've had more of these cases lately. Elder clients letting family move in only to be pushed out of their own lives." But he looked at me carefully. You might be the first I've seen take action before it's too late. I didn't feel brave. I felt clear. I don't want revenge, I said. I want boundaries that hold. Howard tapped the deed gently. We'll transfer it fully into your name with protections in place. No one moves a signature without your say. I nodded. He began drafting the keyboard, tapping steady and fast. As I left, he handed me a slim new folder. Inside, the revised will. The new deed. My name, mine alone, bold in the header. I held it tighter than I expected to. The sky was low and golden by the time I walked back to my car. I didn't head straight home. I stopped at the bakery, first picked up fresh bread, and turned toward the house that finally belonged to me again. He stood on the porch, holding a white paper bag, the kind tied with a simple string, like it was meant to soften the blow. I didn't open the door more than a few inches. "Hi," Alex said. "I brought lemon bars. From that bakery on Main. The ones you like." I looked at the bag, then back at him. "You think dessert fixes this?" He shifted his weight. "No, I didn't know what else to do. You didn't know she changed the locks. I didn't know she'd do it while you were gone." "Not like that. Then why didn't you call me?" I asked. "Why didn't you stop her?" His mouth opened, then closed. "I didn't want to lose our place here." I let that sit. Let the weight of it fill the gap between us. "And I was never part of yours." He flinched just a little. "Mom, I slept in my car, Alex. On the street. At my age. You left me out there." His hand tightened on the bag. "You didn't mean to get caught," I said quietly. "You meant for it to feel clean, quiet." A shift without a confrontation. He nodded slowly. Shame in the line of his shoulders. "I'm not angry," I said, "but you don't get to stand here and pretend we're fine. You let her erase me." "I want to fix it," he said, voice rough. "No, you want to feel better." That landed hard. He didn't try to argue. For once he understood. "You lost this place," I said, "the moment you decided I didn't matter." He nodded. "I understand." "Good." I didn't take the lemon bars. I didn't invite him in. He stepped back, turned slowly, and walked down the steps, with nothing but his silence in hand. I watched him go, then shut the door not out of anger, but because I knew it was time to reclaim what was left behind. I didn't think about them much after that. The silence that used to ache now felt like peace. I filled my days with small repairs, repainted the living room a warm, forgiving yellow, hung the photo of Jack and me back where it belonged. I even pulled the old cast-iron skillet from the back of the cupboard, the one Celeste once called clunky. Clara came over one evening with a bottle of wine and a story about her niece's 4th failed engagement. We laughed until my ribs hurt. For the first time in a long while, the house echoed with something other than tension. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten, my name across the front in Alex's bold, slanted print. I didn't open it right away. I stood at the counter with it resting under my palm, the same way you press a hand to your chest after a long run, steadying yourself before you read what you already suspect. Inside, no apologies, no excuses. Just him, Mom. I've been thinking about everything. About you. About how I let it all slide. How I convinced myself that silence was safer than standing up. I let her make decisions I didn't agree with because I didn't want to lose what little stability we had. But in doing that, I lost something bigger. I miss Sunday mornings. I miss home. If there's a way back, I'll walk it. If not, I understand. Alex. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. He hadn't asked for forgiveness. He hadn't framed himself as the victim. He hadn't asked to move back in. It was the most honest thing I'd seen from him in years. Still, I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer beside the phone. Somewhere safe. Not as a keepsake, just as proof that truth, even late, was still possible. The trees outside had just started to bud again when the phone rang. It was Alex. "Just the two of us," he said. "No expectations. 1 hour, if that's all you'll give me." It was the first time he hadn't tried to frame things on his terms. I told him he could come by on Sunday at 3. 1 hour. He showed up right on time. Not with pastries or flowers, just himself. He stood on the porch like a guest, not a son expecting open arms. I opened the door and nodded him in. We sat across from each other in the living room. I didn't offer tea. He didn't ask for any. "I'm sorry," he said after a long pause. "For all of it. For what I allowed. For what I didn't say when it mattered." I watched him speak without interrupting. There was no rehearsed charm in his voice this time. "We've been going to counseling," he added. "Celeste and I. It's humbling." I nodded. Let the silence stretch just a bit longer. Then he asked it. "Did you take me out of the will?" I met his eyes. "No, I didn't remove you." His shoulders relaxed for a second. "But nothing is automatic anymore." I continued. His breath caught slightly. "I changed the terms I said. Everything that comes after me, house, savings, assets, it's all contingent now. On the relationship we build moving forward, not the one we keep pretending is still intact." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." "It's not about fairness," I said. "It's about clarity. I've learned to stop handing over keys to people who don't knock." He didn't argue, didn't try to twist my words. When the hour was up, he stood. "I don't know if I deserve your trust again." "You don't," I said evenly. "But trust can be earned, not inherited." He paused at the door, waiting to see if I'd soften. I didn't. He left quietly, and as I closed the door behind him, the house held its breath, not in fear, but in balance.